It's open! Ah!
It's not knowledge you can write down. It's a sensory avalanche, a sudden, complete understanding of how the universe folds, why we exist in this strange, tiny corner, and what the sound of creation actually feels like. I was just a mechanic in rural Montana, and now I saw the strings. I saw the blueprint of every single thing since the beginning of time, all because I touched a piece of malfunctioning metal. My eyes were watering, not from sadness, but from absorbing too much light, too much truth, all at once. It all started 3 days ago. I run Lyle's auto out here near the Yellowstone River. It's quiet. My biggest excitement is usually a blown gasket on a beat-up Ford F-150. That morning, I was drinking bad coffee, scrolling through headlines about political instability, just ordinary 2025 anxieties. Then my ham radio, which I usually use to track weather patterns, started screaming. It wasn't static, exactly. It was structured. Like someone holding a microphone right next to a beehive, except the buzzing had a rhythm, a mathematical consistency. My radio equipment usually filters out natural interference. This was something physical, something heavy, moving through the air right over my property. It felt like a massive magnet had just passed by, pulling all the iron in the garage sideways. I grabbed my keys and drove the service truck down the old logging road that borders my back 40. The radio noise got deafening the closer I got to the creek bed. I was thinking maybe a military drone had gone down, or perhaps some highly sensitive weather balloon. But when I stepped out of the truck, the air was suddenly silent, thick, and almost cold, despite the July heat. The ground was scorched in a perfect, wide circle, not burned by fire, but compressed and heated, like a massive iron had been resting there. And right in the middle, half buried in the mud, was the object. It wasn't spherical or disc-shaped. It was a perfect, 12-sided geometric shape, about the size of a toolbox, made of a dark metal that drank the light. I tried lifting it. No way. It had to weigh 400 or 500 pounds, even though it wasn't much bigger than a toaster oven. I finally dragged the truck closer, used a chain and the winch to pull it out. It didn't feel heavy when winching, it felt dense. The metal was cold to the touch, and when I finally got it on the bed of the truck, I noticed the weirdest detail. One of its 12 faces was pulsing, almost imperceptibly, a deep magenta light. I drove it back to the garage, locking the doors immediately. I'm a mechanic. My first thought was how to take it apart. My second thought was, what if this is a bomb? I decided the magenta pulse looked more like a distress signal than a countdown timer. I grabbed a steel dolly and rolled the object into the middle of the workspace, underneath my brightest inspection light. Every tool I tried failed. The diamond drill bit chipped. The plasma cutter wouldn't even register on the metal. It was impervious to everything in my shop. I sat down on a crate, wiping the grease off my safety glasses, feeling defeated. It was clearly advanced technology, and I was trying to fix it with a hammer and a wrench. I just watched the magenta light pulse, steadily, patiently. That's when I noticed the other thing. Standing in the darkest corner of the garage, where the welding equipment is stored, was something tall. I didn't hear it enter. I hadn't opened the side door. It was just there. I didn't see it so much as I realized that the light was wrong in that corner. It was too dark, too structured. It moved. Slowly. Fluidly. It stepped into the light from the inspection lamp. That's when I saw the features, or the lack thereof. The skin was pale and translucent, and underneath, silver light pulsed in organized lines. Circuits. It was a flawless mechanism, but fundamentally, it looked tired. Its giant black eyes weren't focused on me, but on the pulsing metal object on the dolly. I didn't reach for a tool. I just stood there, realizing this wasn't an intruder or an aggressor. It was an owner, looking at a broken possession. It raised one incredibly long, graceful hand toward the object. The fingers were thin, ending in flat, reflective pads. It didn't try to open the box either. It touched the magenta pulsing face, and then looked at me. It didn't speak. There was no telepathy in the movie sense. But the look conveyed everything. This mechanism is failing. It needs a transfer of potential energy to stabilize the field. You can provide this. I was a conduit. A battery booster. It stepped back, gesturing silently toward the object. I felt ridiculous, like I was about to jumpstart a hyperdrive with a coat hanger, but I approached. I touched it. Not the smooth dark metal, but the pulsing magenta light itself. The moment my skin made contact, everything in my world dissolved. There was no garage, no Montana, no sun. There was only pure white light and the sound of something tearing open, a sound that was also a color, a pressure, and a comprehensive database update for my consciousness. They didn't give me the history of their home world. They gave me the physics of our world, seen from a perspective outside of space-time. The knowledge wasn't in English, it was structural. I understood the cyclical nature of consciousness, why certain constants in physics are necessary for complexity, and the incredible, ridiculous luck of water being here. I was seeing the source code. The greatest shock was the truth about human origins. Not evolution, not divine creation as we understand it, but a specific, careful tuning. We were seeded, yes, but not by gods or clumsy explorers. We are a project, a long-term computational model designed to experience randomness in a contained, biologically messy way. Our chaotic complexity is the point of the whole exercise. When the connection snapped, the white light vanished, leaving me tasting copper. The metallic object was no longer magenta, it was glowing a steady, contented sapphire blue. I looked up. The engineer hadn't moved. Its black eyes seemed to regard me with a fraction of approval, the way a master carpenter might look at a sturdy nail well driven. My mind felt stretched thin, like plastic wrap pulled over a skyscraper. All the small, petty worries of my old life, the mortgage, the economy, what to watch on Netflix, were simply gone, irrelevant. How do you worry about a traffic ticket when you understand quantum foam? I felt incredibly alone and incredibly connected at the same time. The engineer turned and walked back toward the dark corner. It didn't glide, it simply moved with an impossible lack of friction. It stopped briefly, facing the wall, then looked back at the object. The sapphire light intensified slightly. It was time for the device to leave, and perhaps, for the engineer to leave, too. I heard the softest sound I've ever heard, a high-frequency whistle only dogs should catch. The blue metal object lifted itself off the dolly. It didn't float with thrust, it just negated gravity entirely. It hovered silently for a moment, then zipped out through the ceiling. Except there was no hole in the ceiling. It simply passed through the sheet metal as if it were vapor. When I turned back, the engineer was gone too. The corner was just a dark storage area again, smelling faintly of ozone and stale oil. I walked over to the dolly. No residue. No singed metal. Nothing. If I hadn't had the memory of universal consciousness downloaded into my brain, I would have convinced myself I hallucinated the whole thing. But the knowledge remains. It's like a second language I can't turn off. When I look at a grain of sand, I see the atomic structure and the vibrational matrix that holds it together. When I look at my hand, I don't just see skin and bone, I see the cascade of chemical events that led to my temporary, beautiful existence. I tried working on a truck yesterday. A simple oil change. I couldn't do it. My hands kept seeing the fractal geometry of the wrench, the inherent stresses in the metal, the flow dynamics of the oil. How can I tighten a drain plug when I know that plug is composed of fields interacting at a speed I can't process? The mundane has become blindingly complex. I haven't told anyone. Who would believe me? Yeah, I fixed an alien spaceship and now I know the secret of the universe. But I can't change your tires. I still drink the bad coffee. I still pay the bills. But every action is now framed by the colossal, silent machinery of creation. The feeling isn't elation. It's a profound, quiet sobriety. I'm not a mechanic anymore. I'm a librarian who read the only book that matters. I know that the God we argue about is simply the ultimate architect, and that we are treasured, messy experiments in consciousness. And I know, deep down, that the repair job I did for that engineer wasn't for them. It was a trade. They needed power, and in return, they gave the mundane, skeptical mechanic what he never knew he needed, the answer to everything. The knowledge isn't in English, or math, or anything human. It's an undeniable feeling, the truth of everything, flowing into my consciousness like high-voltage electricity through a copper wire. I'm standing here, in my filthy machine shop in Alamogordo, staring at something that isn't supposed to exist, and I understand. I understand why everything happens. And the cost of that knowledge? It's the realization that my whole life has been a lie, and now, I can never go back to just fixing transmissions. This changes what it means to be alive. But that happened just an hour ago. To explain, I have to take you back 3 days. I run Rourke's Automotive and Fabrication. It's not much, mostly fixing tractors for nearby farmers and welding broken equipment. The shop is maybe 5 miles outside of town, quiet. Too quiet, maybe. Living out here, you get used to the nothingness, the endless scrubland stretching toward the mountains. I was working on a stubborn diesel engine, a typical day. The only thing out of the ordinary was the heat. It was brutal, even for July 2025. Then, around 4 in the afternoon, the power blinked. Not a full outage, just a flicker, enough to reset the clock on the radio and silence the ancient air compressor. I didn't think much of it until I stepped outside for a smoke break. The sky was wrong. Not stormy, but the quality of the light, a strange, deep sepia tone, like looking at the world through old sunglasses. And the smell. Ozone, but metallic, like when you're cutting steel with a plasma torch, amplified tenfold. I walked about 100 yards into the scrub brush, looking for a downed line. That's when I saw it. It wasn't conventional debris. It was embedded in the dirt, half buried, shiny even under the strange light. It looked like polished obsidian, but impossible, a perfectly geometric shell, rotating, silently shedding the desert dust. It was maybe the size of a microwave oven. When I got close, I felt the air vibrating against my skin, like standing next to a huge bass speaker turned low. There were no scorch marks, no impact crater, just this thing sitting there like someone carefully placed it during the night. But it was flickering dash. As an old mechanic, my brain defaults to diagnostics. Flickering means power instability. I cautiously nudged it with the toe of my work boot. The vibration increased slightly. The thing felt wrong, fundamentally wrong, but also vulnerable. It felt like something expensive and delicate that had taken a bad fall. Getting it back to the shop was difficult. It was heavy, far heavier than its size suggested, like compressed lead. I wrapped it in a heavy canvas tarp and used the hoist on my pickup truck to lift it. Even covered, I could hear a faint, high-pitched whine emanating from within. I set it down on my main steel workbench, right next to my toolbox. My Geiger counter, which I keep around because, well, New Mexico, was silent. No conventional radiation. But as I peeled back the tarp, the air around it was cold, unnaturally cold, even though the metal itself felt slightly warm to the touch. I spent an hour looking for seams, rivets, screws, anything. It was monolithic. Perfect. The rotation was internal, creating the illusion of movement across the stationary exterior. It dawned on me, this wasn't designed to be opened. It was a pressure vessel, a container, or maybe even a cocoon. The flickering got worse. It wasn't just losing light now, it was making a distressed sound, like a tiny, metallic bird trapped inside a cage, chirping frantically in ultra-high frequencies. I realized the problem wasn't external damage, it was internal systemic failure. It was suffering a breakdown. I had an antique military-grade induction heater, used for stubborn bolts. It generates a massive, focused electromagnetic field. It was a stupid, desperate idea. If the system was running on field energy, maybe I could just boost it. Give it a shot of life support. I flipped the switch. The shop lights dimmed instantly. The induction heater roared, a massive, grounding hum. I aimed the coil at the most violently flickering section of the obsidian shell. 4-5 seconds. Nothing. Then, the object went utterly silent. I thought I killed it. I felt a huge wave of relief and immediate disappointment. I shut off the induction heater. The sudden silence was deafening. Then, a crack. Not a breaking sound, but a noise like heavy pressure being equalized, and the obsidian shell split along predetermined fractal lines. What emerged was not a little green man, or a monster, or even a solid object. It was light, pure, shimmering indigo light, tightly contained, swirling like a storm of gas inside the geometric shell. It pulsed once, gently, the sound no longer frantic, but resonant, humming with satisfaction. That was the confrontation. Not violent, but purely cognitive. The entity focused its light on me. I didn't hear a voice, but I heard a thought dash. A thought that said, simply, gratitude. Stabilization achieved. Accessing local consciousness, that's when my head started throbbing, not from pain, but from the sheer volume of data flooding into me. It showed me things. Not images, but concepts. It showed me the universe as a perfect, interconnected machine, and everything we think of as life is just noise in the system. And humanity? We aren't native to Earth. We are seeds, planted here long ago, modified for growth, waiting for a signal. It even addressed religion. Not Jesus specifically, but the foundational impulse. It explained that all our deities, myths, and spiritual drives are just residual echoes of the original programming, our genetic memory straining to recall the gardeners who placed us here. The feeling wasn't judgment, it was pure objective observation. It saw my attempts to fix it, and that simple, pragmatic act of mechanical stabilization was what opened the floodgates. I wasn't worthy of the knowledge, I was just useful. It showed me that consciousness isn't housed in the brain is just an antenna, and my induction heater stabilized the receiving dish enough for the signal to come through clearly. We aren't individuals, we are fractal expressions of a singular, enormous, cosmic intellect. The transfer lasted maybe 3 minutes in real time. When it ended, the indigo light contracted rapidly, sucking itself back into the geometric shell. The shell sealed perfectly, soundlessly, leaving no trace of the fracture lines. I stood there, breathing heavily, smelling ozone and something like crushed flowers. The geometric object was humming a healthy, low frequency now. It was stabilized. I had done my job. But I wasn't Mike Rourke, mechanic, anymore. I was Mike Rourke, temporary repository of impossible cosmic knowledge. The object lifted itself slowly, silently, off the workbench. It drifted toward the large open bay door of the shop. I didn't try to stop it. It was going home, or maybe just to the next relay point. It paused at the door, hovering, and offered one last, resonant pulse of thank you. Now, it's just me and the silence again. But the silence is different. It's heavy with possibility. I still have to fix Mr. Henderson's tractor engine tomorrow, but how can I worry about cylinder heads when I know the secret language of the universe? The mechanic fixed the god, but the god broke the mechanic. And honestly, I don't know if I want to be put back together.